In this podcast, I want to talk about the ubiquitous six-fold design in human biology. It's actually the title of one of my papers. So I'm just going to read it out because, my papers can be a bit too technical for some of my audience. Some of my audience are mainly focused on astrology and all that. But my channel is not really titled after astrological thinking. My channel is titled The 5 Principles of Organized Complexity because organized complexity is a manifestation of prime distribution, prime number distribution. So fundamentally, my channel is a mathematical channel. It's a channel that discusses where the organized complexity of the universe comes from. And this is a very technical question that is at the forefront of every scientific endeavor that human beings have ever practiced, because it is concerned with the discovery of fundamental truth. Organized complexity in the universe is basically like asking, who designed this human cell? Who designed the bacteria? Who designed life? Who designed the earth? What makes the sun possible? Why does it seem as if the earth is just perfect for life? Why does it seem as if the universe is perfect for life? And you're going to come across many scientific propositions that tell you, some of the best or the most popular tell you that there are many iterations of universes and all those universes are not quite right. But we happen to find ourselves in the one that just had all the constants perfect for life. This is an absolute nonsensical take, because our work here in the 5 principles of organized complexity proves that take is absolute garbage. You see, there are not 1 trillion universes or infinite number of universes and then we just happen to be in the right one. That's not how it works. There is only one instantiation of the universe and it always leads to the right one. You see, it's like saying that the day you start your car and it starts on the first try, it means that there are so many other infinite number of days whereby you try to start that car and it doesn't work. You just happen to find yourself in the day when this is nonsense. The car is built to start. The specification of its design is such that when you turn the key or when you press the ignition, it starts. So that when that doesn't happen, then there's something wrong. All right. So we have to be very careful where science stops and pseudoscience begins, because all those talk about infinite number of universes, it's all pseudoscience. It's not real science. It doesn't mean anything. And, science is in a precarious state in the world today. Why? Because science is supposed to be the search for truth. But when the people who are pursuing science are also pursuing the means such that they can be the only ones to tell you what science is, then it's no longer the search for truth. Okay, it's now just a system that is trying to validate only one person's opinion, because science depends on verification, validation. You would say truth does not depend on consensus, but consensus can help bolster truth. You understand? Science, as it is in the modern day, is basically acting like a religion. And you won't know this because you're not in the industry. You're not inside. You're not an insider. All right. You go create some marvelous idea now, from your garage and invent some new way of thinking and then try to publish it and see what happens. There are very few places that will accept your manuscript for publication. That's just the fact of the matter. Why? Because, it's like an industry in some sense. They invest a lot of money in a particular direction and somebody comes and proves that all that direction is worthless. They just buy up that company and hide it, or they just destroy the owner or something like that, or just find a way to make it disappear. Yeah, because that's the way that business is done in this modern world. You understand? It's not the way that it should be done, but that's the way that it is being done, because the people who are doing this, they have no respect for truth, no respect for science. They tell you that they use science. Science is what defines the modern world. It's not true. The modern world is defined by domination and violence and denial. Okay? So I started my channel as a counter narrative to this propaganda of promoting a strictly Eurocentric point of view and claiming that this is the only way that reality is. So Africans don't appear in any of the science books. Black Africans don't appear. You read your science books, your popular science books, and you don't hear of some black African name as the discoverer of one thing or the other. No. It's like they don't exist in that sense, right? And you think that's normal? It's not. Because if you've been listening to my podcast, I've told you that thing that is called human blackness, it is the capacity for science. But people don't know. Why? Because they don't want to know. They've been programmed not to know. So the fact that the people with the greatest capacity for awareness of science don't feature at all in the science, it already tells you that the whole thing is suspect. Okay? Now, listen, these are just words I'm saying. It's up to you to go figure it out, because at the end of the day, knowledge, how it is pursued and expressed, is done through mathematics. Okay, so the 5 principles of organized complexity is a concept that I birthed at some point in the last 2 decades, and I have been preaching about it ever since. I've been publishing about it, writing about it. My work, my ideas are becoming ubiquitous now. It's just that you may be hearing themes of my ideas, but they are not connecting it to me, and there's a reason for that. So you hear of people developing their own framework of this, but it's all trying to borrow from my core design. But you're not going to hear anybody mention my name in connection to that thing. They will not say, oh, we got this inspiration from here, or we reference this work. No, they always leave that out. Why? Because anti-black racists, they have an anathema to learning from a black African man. It's something that is embedded. This is the reason why you don't find black African names in your science textbook. It's not because people haven't been doing work. Do you understand? But science is something that is, from the point of view of the anti-black racists, they suppress the work of black people, or they steal it outrightly. And, they hold the media. So what do you know? The public only knows what the media tells them. The public doesn't know anything else. You understand? It's left to the public to look at the patterns that have emerged and say, but why? Why do you have this? Why do you have that? Ask them that question, and they begin to tell you about white supremacy. They begin to tell you about how Africans have, or black Africans have, low IQ and all that. Why don't you ask them what the causation between pale, non-melanated skin and human intelligence? Ask them to show you the science, the evidence that proves that there is a relationship, a causality. Because that's exactly what you're saying when you're saying white supremacy, or you're saying anti-black racism. You are saying that there's a relationship between not having epidermal melanin and the functioning of your brain. Now, it's an argument that can only be made in an environment where you have almost everybody foolish. Yeah, because you can't make that type of argument in a world that understands truth and science. Because it's like saying that, oh, no need to breathe air. Air will kill you. This is bonkers, because, this is the exact opposite of experience. But people don't know the difference. That is, you can tell people don't breathe air because air is going to kill you, and they will believe it without realizing that they're breathing air just to survive. It just tells you that the level of cognition that the people are operating at. Blackness is literally the definition of intelligence in the universe. You don't believe me? Well, that's why I want to read you this paper. Because, when I say blackness, people think that I'm talking about human melanin only. No. Blackness is a physics. It is the physics of organized complexity. It is the physics that is responsible for the emergence of organized complexity in the universe. What does that mean? The entire narrative of organized complexity stems from the fact that reality is a mathematical construct. All right? The universe, the state space of the universe, is what I call a harmonic divisor fan lattice. And that lattice is a product of the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. This is proven. Do you understand? So that fundamental theorem of arithmetic is really just a statement about the distribution of prime numbers. That's the underlying central theorem of it. So the lattice itself is isomorphic to the distribution of prime numbers. So everything that the lattice does is the behavior of prime numbers in that sense. So organized complexity is rooted in the Riemann theorem. I used to call it the Riemann hypothesis, but I don't do so anymore, because in organized complexity, the Riemann hypothesis is the Riemann theorem. So the Riemann theorem is basically the mathematical description of the vibrations that occur in the distribution of prime numbers. And these vibrations are fractal in some sense, but they are what I call intelligent noise. Why? Because they are the spectral nature of blackness. And what do you call blackness? Blackness is the underlying sixness symmetry that is revealed on the lattice. It's right there on the lattice. Once you create the lattice and you look at it, you see the sixness symmetry there. That sixness symmetry controls the distribution of prime numbers. That sixness symmetry, when reality makes it in a certain way, it's black. For instance, in red giant stars, they synthesize carbon through nuclear fusion. I have a paper on that. 3 alpha particles come together to create a carbon atom. I have a paper that really makes a breakthrough in the description of that, because I show that the harmonic divisor fan lattice is the scaffolding upon which this process is being guided. So what emerges is carbon. Carbon 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. It's very stable in the sense that it has a structure that allows it to replicate the behavior of the lattice, even though it's just a concise form, a representation of 6s. So carbon serves a very important role in terms of looking at the universe in terms of information, in that you are able to pack the information of the entire lattice into such a small structure that is very stable. So nature uses carbon as the backbone for computation, especially organic computation, because you're going to build more advanced complex systems. So carbon is the implementation of creativity and simplicity. And this feature of creativity and simplicity is a feature of the distribution of prime numbers, because in the organized complexity framework, the distribution of prime numbers, it has a feature called infinite dynamic vorticity, meaning like spirals. I'm not going to go into all the details because I have papers for all these things. You can go read them up. They're vortices. A vortex is like what forms in when you take a bath and you want to drain the water. And as the air rushes out of the drain pipe, right, the water adapts to form a vortex to allow the air to escape so that it can go into the drain pipe. All right? It's a vortex. So a vortex is like a spinning action because it induces a spin in some sense. And this is something that is native to all existence because it is a fundamental property of the lattice, the HDF lattice. It is the fundamental property of the distribution of prime numbers. But that's not all that it is. The reason why you have 1/2 as a constant in the non-trivial zeros of Riemann zeta function, which is like the open Riemann hypothesis, one of the most famous open problems in mathematics. In organized complex, that problem is no longer open. It is a theorem, meaning it has been proven. Do you understand? And then it forms the basis upon which we now erect the mathematical edifice of organized complexity. So that 1/2, right? It's because that vorticity, it has another property, a property called dynamic stability. And simply what that means is that dynamic vorticity is like dynamic chaos. It's mixing everything together, making sure everything is thoroughly mixed up together. So it mixes up the distribution of prime numbers in such a way that the prime numbers on a one-dimensional line, they are proven to be chaotic. They have no rhyme or reason. All right? But when you spectralize it, the rhyme and reason emerges. And that's what you call dynamic stability. And it is based on the sixness symmetry. That's the resolution to the mathematical problem. All right? So the link to the papers on my website, the proof for Riemann's hypothesis and all that. Because the reason why I talk about it is because nature does not wait for us to know something. Nature has problems to solve. And it uses the best thing available to it that is good to solve the problem. It organizes and arranges everything to make certain things possible. That's it. That's its mandate. That's the command it has been given. The thing that it is using to do this is blackness. It is using this property of dynamic stability and dynamic vorticity. It is using these things to design organized complexity across the entire universe. The peak experience of this dynamic vorticity and stability is you, a human being. That's why I want to read this paper to you, so that you can begin to understand the ubiquitous sixfold design in human biology, a manifestation of organized complexity. I wrote this paper and published it in May 2025. The paper presents an extensive investigation into the recurring pattern of sixness in the functional design and development of human biological systems, extending the comprehensive exploration initially put forward in a paper which we wrote earlier. We posit that this ubiquitous sixness is not arbitrary, but reflects a fundamental principle of organized complexity. Because this sixness symmetry, right, in red giant stars, it makes carbon. That carbon is black. That's why I started calling organized complexity a physics of blackness. Why? Because you will see, because when it comes down to the main problem in this world as it is now, it's a social problem, a problem that has to do with blackness. Because when you have significant melanin on your epidermis, because of the latitude you were born in, your ancestors have lived in, and people now begin to develop social narratives around that. But there's no social narrative. The narrative that exists is a narrative of physics. So why people should begin to develop social narratives around the behavior of physics is just, because for me it's entirely foolish. But they have the reasons why they do that, and most of it comes down to self-rejection in some sense, the absence of blackness. But that's impossible. Every human being is black. When I finish reading this paper, you will understand what I mean. Because blackness is a physics. It's not a skin epidermis thing. Even though the melanin on your epidermis and the melanin all over your body, it is also a representation of this sixness symmetry, just like you have in carbon. And there's a reason why. It all has to do with the physics of functional goodness, functional harmony, getting things to work in the best way possible. That's it. So how anybody feels about this is really is, it's like having a feeling about the way the sun shines. What difference does it make? You can have a feeling all the way that you want, but what difference does it really make? The sun doesn't care. All right? God does what he does because it is good. It works. It's perfect. So how you feel about it is your own lack of understanding. All right? By rigorously detailing verifiable, non-arbitrary, six-layered and hexadic structural, biochemical and physiological designs across various organs, cellular components and developmental processes, we demonstrate how this pervasive sixness optimizes stability, packing efficiency, energy transfer, and the harmonious management of apparent randomness within complex biological systems. This work integrates the foundational links between number theory, the inherent structure of carbon-12, and the sophisticated organization of biological systems, providing compelling evidence for a deep-seated cosmic blueprint in human biology. That's the abstract I've just read for you. So I'm going to skip some of the other whatever and dive straight into the sixness in human development from conception to organogenesis. The journey of human development from a single fertilized cell to a complex organism is a continuous demonstration of organized complexity. We observe patterns of sixness emerging across various developmental stages, underscoring a fundamental ordering principle. In the earliest stages of embryonic development, as blastomeres divide and compact to form the morula and blastocyst, principles of geometric efficiency that approximate sixness are at play. During compaction, blastomeres maximize cell-to-cell contact, leading to highly organized, often quasi-hexagonal arrangements in cross-section. This is a fundamental principle of packing that maximizes density and stability. This aligns with the idea that hexadic architectures optimize stability and packing efficiency, minimizing energy and maximizing density. Hexadic means according to a sixness. Hex is 6. Hexagon is a 6-sided polygon. All right? Now, during gastrulation, for instance, gastrulation is a pivotal stage where the basic body plan is established through massive cellular rearrangement. This intricate process is orchestrated by a precise interplay of signaling pathways. 6 major signaling pathways for patterning. The complex cell movement and differentiations of gastrulation are driven by a harmonious interaction of at least 6 major signaling pathways, ensuring the highly prescribed output of the basic body plan. There is the WNT signaling pathway, the bone morphogenetic protein signaling pathway, the fibroblast growth factor signaling pathway, the nodal signaling pathway, the retinoic acid signaling pathway, and the hedgehog, what is called sonic hedgehog signaling pathway. There's an interesting story about why it's called sonic hedgehog, but I won't go into that. These pathways, while interacting, represent distinct and crucial drivers of axis formation and germ layer specification, exemplifying functional harmony where intricate biological processes efficiently manage and order what might otherwise be random inputs and fluctuating conditions. Neurulation. Neurulation is the development of the neural tube in the human embryo. The formation and closure of the neural tube are complex morphogenic events critical for nervous system development. 6 key cellular mechanisms of neural tube closure. Successful neural tube formation and closure involve a coordinated interplay of at least 6 distinct cellular processes. Apical constriction, that is contraction of apical actin rings in neuroepithelial cells. Cell wedging intercalation, changes in cell shape and rearrangement facilitating bending. Differential cell proliferation or growth, that is localized differences in cell division rates. Extracellular matrix remodeling, that is changes in the surrounding scaffolding. Actin-myosin contraction, that is forces generated by the cytoskeleton. Then the 6th one, cell adhesion molecule dynamics, that is changes in proteins like cathedrins, mediating cell-to-cell binding. This coordinated action fits the concept of functional harmony, creating ordered solutions from dynamic systems. The idea is dynamic chaos on one side, which is dynamic vorticity, which is just the way of mixing everything up. But out of that emerges what? Dynamic stability. It's the same process that delivers both. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's the proof of Riemann's hypothesis. That prime numbers, they are like random noise. They literally are equivalent to random, what you call Gaussian noise. And yet they contain a signal that nature uses for intelligence. And there's a reason why that happens, you see, because nature is about the functional goodness, which means you must do the best possible thing, maximum goodness at the lowest possible cost, energy-wise. Alright? So what nature does is that it doesn't bother to create different signals for different things. It just creates noise. And then it creates a system for extracting intelligence from that noise. That system that extracts intelligence from noise is blackness. And everywhere in your body where this type of noise is encountered, your body will produce blackness there. Without it, that place will become very cancerous and you will die. Listen, these are not claims. I didn't invent these things. You can go and check your biology textbooks or your whatever. If you have your AIs, go and question them. But you will never find a textbook telling you the way that it is, like I'm doing right now. You will never. Why? Because you live in a system of white supremacy. And white supremacy is a system that is maintained via lies and denial. Once you see the truth, the entire system collapses because you realize that it's not real. All right? Your body doesn't care about white supremacy. No physical process in the universe cares about that nonsense. It does only what is good. All right? So there are 6 signaling centers for neural tube patterning. So following closure, the neural tube is precisely patterned along its axis by signals from at least 6 key organizing centers, which establish the basis for the later 6 layered structures of the brain. There is the floor plate, number 1, that is where it's secreting sonic hedgehog, patterning ventral neural tube. And sonic hedgehog, like I've said, is one of those gradient enzymes. This is an enzyme. I can't quite remember the name. I just said it a few minutes ago. Then secondly, the roof plate, secreting BMPs and WNTs, patterning dorsal neural tube. This is the formation of a human being in the very first few weeks of the human being as it is forming in the womb. Then there's the notochord. The notochord is inducing the floor plate. Then there's the paraxial mesoderm. These are somites, influencing specific regions in the developing embryo. Then there's the anterior visceral endoderm, important for anterior patterning. Then there's the isthmic organizer at the midbrain hindbrain boundary, secreting FGF8 and WNT1. These interacting regions establish the precise functional design that will lead to the mature brain's highly ordered, often 6-layered structures. The neural crest development, its migration and diversification. Neural crest cells are remarkable for their multipotency and extensive migrations throughout the embryo, giving rise to an incredible diversity of tissue. 6 major molecular factors for melanocyte lineage initiation, because melanocytes are produced from the neural crest. This neural crest also produces most of the tissues that will go on to form your central nervous system. The specification of neural crest cells into melanocytes is critically dependent on a network of at least 6 major independently verifiable molecular factors. These are transcription factors or signaling pathways. There is the PAX3, the SOX10, the melanocyte-inducing transcription factor, the WNT signaling pathway, the endothelin receptor B signaling. Then there's the stem cell factor, which is called the KIT signaling. So these are 6 major independently verifiable molecular factors. This precise orchestration channels the neural crest cell towards its melanocyte fate, aligning with the idea of highly prescribed functional and harmonious outputs. 6-step eumelanin synthesis pathway. The paper itself confirms a profound biochemical sixness within melanocytes. Melanin synthesis, which is melanogenesis, involves 6 major biochemical steps from tyrosine. Tyrosine is the amino acid that builds melanin. So it goes from tyrosine hydroxylation, dopa oxidation. Dopa has a connection to dopamine because melanin and dopamine are very similar. Then cyclization, polymerization, melanosome formation, and melanosome transfer. This cascade ensures efficient production and distribution of melanin for photoprotection and other uses in the body. Melanin is not really just a photoprotection agent like your mainstream science tries to convey. Melanin is more than that. I have a paper on melanin, and you don't even know I've been studying a lot of things, but when I came to fully understand what melanin is, We're looking at something that is behaving like the entire universe in biochemical form. It's incredible. Go read the paper. I have a paper on melanin. So, organogenesis, the sixfold blueprint in human development. There are 6 layers of the cerebral neocortex. The neocortex is the part of you that actually makes you human, because it is the part of you where you are filtering out all the things that animals wouldn't filter out. So your neocortex is a sophisticated replication of the lattice, the HDF lattice, the harmonic divisor fan lattice. That's what your cerebral neocortex tries to mimic. And the more faithful it mimics it, the more self-aware you become. It's really what it is. This is a discovery I made many, many years ago. So the neocortex is fundamentally organized into 6 distinct histologically and functionally defined layers. That's layers lamina 1 to 6, each with unique cell types, inputs, and outputs. This 6-layered structure is established during development through precise neuronal migration and differentiation, confirming the direct emergence of this design. Listen, your body could have chosen any other structure, architecture for the cerebral neocortex, considering its importance in the emanation of self-consciousness, but it didn't. Biological systems are self-organizing systems, so they are being organized by the entire universe. So when the universe finds a solution, it's telling you something. It's telling you that this is what works. So when we understand it, we gain that insight into ourselves or into the behavior of nature. This is what works. And that's what is expected of us in the area of studying blackness. When we look at blackness, we're supposed to be seeing a solution that is so amazing that we are looking to emulate it, not to castigate it and then create an entire social reality where we train everybody and tell everybody that blackness is useless. This is, you really don't know what this is. If you're living in that type of reality, you are lost completely. You are finished, but you don't know. Similarly, the retina is organized into 6 major functional processing layers. There's the photoreceptor layer, the outer nuclear layer, the outer plexiform layer, the inner nuclear layer, inner plexiform layer, and the ganglion cell layer. These layers are subsequently, during development, providing another clear example of the 6-layered functional design established during organogenesis. Then we move to the thalamus. The thalamus is like an egg-shaped organelle in some sense, in the center of your brain in some sense. The thalamus is like a hub, like a communications hub. You can imagine that all your sense organs, all the nerves and all the whatever from your sense organs, except your olfactory sense organ, they run through the thalamus. So the thalamus takes in all of these connections, does its magic and mixing, and projects its output into that cerebral neocortex with 6 layers. But it's not magic. I just use that term because I don't want to go into details. If you want to know what the thalamus is doing, I have a podcast, Sun Conjunct Pluto, where I explain exactly how self-awareness is generated in the brain. It's being orchestrated by the thalamus, because the thalamus creates something which I call a null field. A null field. And the rest of the architecture of the brain responds to neutralize that null field. And that process of trying to neutralize the null field, that is what brings a sense of self into existence. It's an idea that I developed. Listen, as time goes by, you will begin to hear people in academia echo these things. They just will not want to attach my name to it. This is what they do. This is what they've been doing to me for almost 20 years. Do you know how many times I have opened so-called papers, especially papers that everybody's making noise about, I open it and I see basically something I said years ago, something I said and published years ago. Somebody else is claiming it as a discovery. And I'm like, wait a second, am I invisible here? But that's what it is. That's what the system of white supremacy means, that black people are invisible. At best, you are invisible. At worst, they treat you like a disease or a plague or a pest. But at best, they just ignore you completely and pretend that you don't exist so that they can steal everything that you have made. Reclassify it, rename it, relabel it, and then continue as if, it's a form of insanity, but we'll get to that later. Alright, so the thalamus, a critical brain hub, exemplifies sixness in its structure and its development influence on cortical organization. The 6 layers of the lateral geniculate nucleus. The lateral geniculate nucleus, a part of the thalamus crucial for visual information relay, is organized into 6 distinct cellular layers. This segregation ensures harmonious processing and relay of distinct visual information streams. Remember, nature made this choice, not you. There are 6 major molecular guidance cues for thalamocortical axons. Axons are like a special type of neurons. The precise pathfinding of thalamic axons to the cortex is guided by at least 6 major classes of molecular cues, ensuring the meticulous construction of brain circuitry. These 6 major classes of molecular cues are Number 1, nectrins. Number 2, slits. Number 3, semaphorins. Number 4, ephrins. Number 5, fibroblast growth factors. Number 6, adhesion molecules. This reflects an ordered solution dealing with systems that mimic chaos and noise in the intricate environment of the developing brain. 6 developmental milestones in thalamocortical axon pathfinding. The journey of a thalamic axon involves a series of critical developmental checkpoints. Number 1, axon outgrowth / initial extension. Number 2, guidance through the internal capsule. Number 3, crossing the pallial-subpallial boundary, the intermediate target zone. Number 4, entry into the cortical plate. Number 5, targeting to specific cortical areas, which is dealing with topography. Number 6, laminar specificity, layer targeting. These illustrate 6 major sequential stages of neurodevelopment, ensuring the brain's complex circuitry is meticulously constructed. Now let's go to human DNA, the 6-fold blueprint of life. Okay? Even at the most fundamental level of the genetic code and molecular structure, sixness is intrinsically woven into human DNA. 6-membered rings of DNA bases. The pyrimidine base, cytosine and thymine are single ring structures containing only a 6-carbon ring, while purine bases, adenine and guanine, include a 6-carbon ring fused to a 5-carbon ring. This inherent sixness in the fundamental building blocks contributes to DNA stability and efficient packing. 6 codons for leucine and 6 reading frames. The amino acid leucine is encoded by 6 different codons. Furthermore, any double-stranded DNA molecule has 6 possible reading frames, 3 on each strand. This demonstrates sixness in the functional rules governing genetic information, requiring the cell to precisely select the correct frame to generate harmonious outputs. Hexagonal packing in dense DNA contacts. Under high-density conditions, example in liquid crystalline phases or viral capsids, DNA molecules exhibit a tendency towards hexagonal packing, where a central DNA strand can have 6 closest neighbors. This geometric efficiency optimizes stability and packing density. Carbon-12 foundation. DNA's very structure is built upon a carbon backbone. Carbon-12, the dominant isotope, has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. This inherent sixness serves as the primal blueprint for all organic and biological complexity, including DNA itself. Microtubules, a 6-fold design for cellular architecture and dynamics. People love to talk about microtubules, especially those who are trying to find the reason or the rationale for human consciousness. They keep focusing on microtubules. Microtubules are a transport system, so... Microtubules, essential components of the cytoskeleton, exhibit profound sixness in their structural and functional organization. They have a hexameric arrangement of tubulin rings in cross-section. Microtubules are hollow cylinders whose walls are formed by 13 protofilaments, which arrange to create a 6-start helix. I remember having a debate with someone, about this 13, why 13? Well, it's very simple. If you go to the US dollar, for instance, the United States dollar, there's a point where, you have these 13 stars, right? It's supposed to represent the 13 colonies and everything. That's not true. No, it has nothing to do with 13. 13 is because you have one person who is one star that is sitting at the midpoint and is looking at 6 on one side and 6 on the other side. When you find 13 instead of 12, you're looking at 12 being observed, and 12 is simply 2 6s. Alright? And most people don't know this. They think it's all about 13 colonies and everything. They wonder what the affiliation is between the United States and what you call a modern state of Israel today. But they don't know that all these things they go back way back. These are... I've talked about these things extensively in some of my podcasts, but people will be shocked at what is going on in their reality. They don't even know anything. You just sit down and you just be occupying a reality where even though every aspect of you is connected to the universe, your sense of self, 0. You don't know what is going on. And it's not your fault. It's a deliberate condition that people have been plunged into so that they can be exploited. You understand? They can be farmed like animals. In cross-section, the arrangement of tubulin subunits forms a hexagonal lattice. Each tubulin dimer interacts with 6 neighboring dimers, maximizing packing efficiency and stability. 6 primary roles in cellular dynamics. Microtubules perform 6 major distinct functional roles: maintaining cell shape and polarity, intracellular transport, chromosome segregation, ciliary and flagellar movement, neuronal axon dendrite formation, and organelle positioning. This multifaceted design ensures highly prescribed functional and harmonious outputs. There are 6 classes of microtubule-associated proteins. The dynamic behavior of microtubules is regulated by 6 major functional classes of MAPs. Microtubule stabilizers / bundling proteins, destabilizers / severing proteins, nucleators, motor proteins that are kinesins and dynesins, plus end tracking proteins, and cross-linking scaffold microtubule associated proteins. This complex interplay of molecular components allows for harmonious management of apparent randomness. Anywhere nature has to deal with something that looks like randomness or noise or Gaussian noise, which is a noise that is like a static on your TV screen. You know those old TV screens and you put them on and there's no reception? You get a static, right? That's what white noise looks like. It's called Gaussian noise. It means that there is no tendency towards one direction or the other. Everything just seems totally diffused. Well, when blackness comes into contact with that type of thing, it begins to do something. Because it doesn't see that noise per se, right? It sees intelligence. So it will retrieve from that noise what it needs to create what it wants. And this way, it becomes very cheap for the universe to transmit intelligence to every corner of the universe. Everything, everywhere is learning how to be what it is. It is drawing its understanding or its way of being from the physical laws of nature. So scientists, some of them, they become baffled when they check certain comets. They take some material from comets, they retrieve it, bring it back down to Earth, and they see organic materials in there. In fact, they have found all the precursors for life on asteroids and comets. Maybe not comets, but asteroids. And they're scratching their heads. What are you scratching your head for? The laws of physics encode life. The only reason why you have the laws of physics the way that you do is because within them, they contain the instructions to build life. It's not speculation. I have demonstrated this. I have proven this in my publications. All the laws of physics, they come from the behavior of this lattice, the behavior of arithmetic, the behavior of the distribution of prime numbers. All, from the speed of light to Planck's constant. Name it, whatever physical constant you want to name, from the mass of the electron to the mass of the proton to the fact that you have 6 quarks, 6 leptons, 6 this. It's all coming from this. It's a self-organizing intelligence. The thing that makes everything work is that blackness that is being rejected on the earth. So tell me, how something so fundamental, how is it possible for it to be rejected? And it's why I say that there are no white human beings. And people think I'm being facetious. People think I'm being racist or whatever. Meanwhile, I'm only telling them a truth that they have been programmed not to understand anymore, so as to create this illusion of human racism that doesn't exist. All this sixness, 6 is black. That's what it is. Do you understand me? I didn't say so. The one who made this universe is the one who decided it like that. I'm only observing it and I'm making it known to you. If you want to accept it, fine. If you don't want to accept it, what difference does it make? It doesn't stop your body from working. Your body is built according to this thing. Whether you accept it or not, what difference does it make? Everything is built according to it. So whether you accept it or not, what difference does it make really? Deceit only exists in the human brain. That's where the space for it exists. It doesn't exist in nature. There's nothing in nature that is trying to be deceitful, that is trying to hide what it is or trying. No, it doesn't work like that. Everything is telling you exactly what it is and how it is. So the human being now takes that information and decides that they're going to twist it around. Well, that's how human beings, in one of the ways in which human beings express their free will. But if you really understand what is going on, there is no free will. There is only one story. And the fact that you don't know what that is means that you do not know. You're not aware of it yet. Because when you become aware of it, then you realize the truth. And it's always been there. I like to think of it as some type of assessment, but that's a different conversation. Mitochondria, they're always in the news these days because they seem to be the latest fad in biology and all that. But, mitochondria, they make ATP. And I've already told you that ATP is the biochemical structure of 3 6s, which is the symbol for organized complexity. All right. So without ATP, no biological process can proceed. None. Why? Because, first of all, before you shake hand with someone, you have to know that they've got a hand. Otherwise, you're going to have serious problems. So everything makes sure that everything is in accordance with organized complexity. If not, no transaction. That's really what it is. Mitochondria, the cell's powerhouses, demonstrate sixness in their energy-generating machinery and metabolic integration. 6 macromolecular components of the electron transport chain. Electron transport chain is a very vital process in how we make energy for use, how we run our systems, biological systems. Without it, Electron transport is basically just electricity. That's what it's saying. It's just using fanciful terms to say that there's an electric current flowing here. The electron transport chain central to ATP synthesis consists of 6 major macromolecular components: complex 1, complex 2, coenzyme Q, complex 3, cytochrome C, and complex 4. This biochemical cascade ensures efficient energy transfer and optimal energy management. Then there are 6 key metabolic pathways interacting with mitochondria. Mitochondria are central hubs for 6 major metabolic pathways: glycolysis, which is producing pyruvate, then pyruvate oxidation, the Krebs cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, fatty acid oxidation, that is beta oxidation, and gluconeogenesis. This highlights their harmonious role in cellular energy dynamics. I talked about this a lot in my podcast series, The Biochemistry of Living Memory. And it's funny now when I come across so many things these days that are taking ideas from this podcast. It's a shame, It's a shame that a group of people just prefer evil to goodness. It's a conscious decision being made to prefer evil. How do you steal the work and the invention of somebody and then claim it as your own? What kind of... I often sit down and I think of this and I wonder, that's a statement of extreme impoverishment, because the only motivation for something like this is coming from a person that has experienced extreme deprivation. So they must have everything for themselves. You can't allow anybody else to have anything. It has to be mine. It has to be mine. What kind of impoverishment is that? You see, but organized complexity cannot be stolen because ... because it comes from somewhere else. All right. Now, so these metabolic pathways in the Biochemistry of Living Memory podcast, I basically posit that these pathways are the basis of memory, because your memory is not made up of things per se. Your memory is just an encoding of energy differentials, which is why mitochondria is central to memory formation. You have more mitochondria in your brain than anywhere else, any other tissue in your body. Your brain is the single largest consumer of energy in your body. The tissue of your brain consumes more energy than any other organ. You see, I talked about how all these glycolysis, fatty acid oxidation, which is beta oxidation, and gluconeogenesis, how glycolysis is used as a datum. A datum is a fixed reference. And so deviations from a fixed reference are used to calibrate the intensity of differential, the intensity of deviation. And that memory is basically a tremendous accumulation of the pattern of these deviations. That's what you recall. You recall energy transactions. Anyway, so it's a podcast. I think it's 6 parts, or did I even complete the 6th part? I don't know. I don't remember. But it's meant to be a 6-part podcast, almost 7 or 8 hours long, and it's very detailed. It's similar to what I'm doing here, but here I'm just focusing on the sixness of it all. And 6 major components of mitochondrial structure. The mitochondrion itself is defined by 6 major structural components. There's the outer mitochondrial membrane, the inner mitochondrial membrane, the intermembrane space, the mitochondrial matrix, the cristae, and the mitochondrial DNA and ribosomes within the matrix. Okay? It's a very beautiful organelle, the mitochondria. So ribosomes, a 6-fold design for protein synthesis. Ribosomes, the cellular protein factories, exhibit sixness in the RNA types involved in translation and the sequential steps of protein synthesis. There are 6 major RNA types involved in translation. Protein synthesis involves 6 key classes of RNA molecules. There's the messenger RNA. That is getting a very bad name these days because of the vaccines and all that. But messenger RNAs are something that's so common. They're so ubiquitous in your body. It's incredible. Transfer RNA, ribosomal RNA, small nucleolar RNA, and microRNA, or long non-coding RNA. Alright, these are the 6 major classes of RNAs. And RNAs are just basically read-write mechanisms to long-term memory storage. So those differentials I'm talking about, yeah. The pattern, the long-term pattern of these differentials are encoded as your DNA because they're ancestral. So you keep carrying and updating the memory of what it is to be human. But mostly it revolves around the memory of what you and your ancestors are eating. What you are eating, what you're drinking, how you are taking the sun, that is your location on a 3-dimensional sphere inclined to a star. So all that information is being recorded. Why? Because that is what is crucial. Right? Once humans emerge on a planet, they begin to store memory. And memory is not something that is strictly biological. Memory is a feature of the universe. It's physical processes before it becomes biological reality, okay? And I talked about all of that in the biochemistry of living memory. So there are 6 key stages of translation. The process of translation itself, and translation is just the process of making proteins. The process of translation itself is a complex multi-stage cascade consisting of 6 major sequential stages. There is the initiation, the elongation, which is codon recognition, the elongation, which is peptide bond formation, another elongation, which is really translocation, and then termination, and then ribosome recycling. So basically, elongation is featured 3 times, but there are 3 different types of elongation: initiation, codon recognition, peptide bond formation, translocation, termination, and ribosome recycling. Those are the 6 stages. Then now we talk about the human sperm and ovum. Now, listen, I just focused on these particular areas. There are so many. Any area you look at in your body, you will find the same sixness strategy there, this sixness symmetry in everything. And the reason is because it has to be 6. Why? Because it means that nature doesn't have to bother with carrying the information for everything. It can rely on the fact that its design means that the sixness is always present. And what that means is that it can always find what it is looking for. Sixness is like a GPS in chaos. When you know where the 6s are, it means you know where the prime numbers are. Yeah, because if you're going to arrange things and organize things, if you land on a prime number, you're in serious trouble. Nothing can divide it, only itself and 1. So navigating around them becomes a construction strategy for complex systems. This is like the key thing underlying organized complexity. And I published this many years ago. I've been waiting for credit ever since. They're just dancing around the whole thing. Very soon they'll start claiming that it is their idea. But organized complexity cannot be stolen because ... Now, the gametes, which are the sex cells, fundamental to reproduction, also exhibit inherent sixness in their specialized structure and processes. There are 6 major classes of proteins for sperm motility. Sperm motility relies on 6 major functional classes of proteins. I don't know if I should keep listing them out because what do people care, As a listener, what do you really care? There are also 6 major structural regions of a mature sperm. If you want to get the details, you just read the paper. Maybe that's what I should have done from the beginning, instead of the podcast being so long. There are also 6 key stages or 6 key steps in sperm egg recognition and fusion. There are 6 major glycoprotein components, states of the zona pellucida. 6 key stages of ovarian follicle development. There are also 6 major classes of cytokines, growth factors regulating folliculogenesis. Now, listen, these are not just things that I'm just putting together because I want to demonstrate a sick. I've used these ideas to publish how to cure almost every human disease. The only ones I've not published on are the ones that I've not been able to think about. That's really what it is. Because the body is a self-healing system. It organizes itself according to organized complexity. That is its truth. So when there's a problem, it's because this sixness, right? The symmetry has been disturbed somewhere. You look for where that disturbance is taking place and whatever it is that is creating the disturbance. Once you remove that disturbance, the body immediately returns itself to health. Including aging is simply an accumulation of dissonance, and dissonance is noise. If you remove the dissonance, the cells don't care whether they are 50 years old or whether they are 100. Cells recycle themselves. So you also have sixness in endocrine system regulation. The pituitary gland is a 6-fold master regulator. The 6 major hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary is the growth hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, the follicle stimulating hormone, the luteinizing hormone, the prolactin hormone. This 6-fold output of crucial neurochemical messengers provides harmonious control over various bodily demands, ensuring appropriate signals are sent at optimal times. There are 6 major cell types in the anterior pituitary. They are the somatotrophs. They secrete GH, that's the growth hormone. Then there's the thyrotrophs. They secrete the TSH. Then there are the corticotrophs. They secrete the ACTH, which is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Then there's the gonadotrophs, the lactotrophs, and the folliculostellate cells. They are non-secretory support cells. This composition ensures the gland's harmonious system for diverse hormonal output. I keep repeating this term, harmonious, because that's what the blackness does. That's what the sixness is all about. Blackness is not a photoprotector per se. What blackness is a harmonizer. It brings out intelligent order from chaos. Because chaos is everywhere. You hear physicists talk about how it is very difficult to model non-linear dynamical systems. Because they're very complex and they have a tendency towards very complex behavior. And yet nature manages these things. How? How does it do that? It's because of blackness as a physics. So it allows things to become as complex or as chaotic as they want to be. It doesn't have any problem with that. Because it knows that it can insert this sixness symmetry into that process and out of it will retrieve order. Why? Because there is no system that can be more chaotic than the distribution of prime numbers. None. It is infinitely chaotic, infinite dynamic vorticity. And yet, that same infinite dynamic vorticity also has the quality of infinite dynamic stability. Meaning, on one way of looking at it, it is incredibly novel, infinitely novel, meaning it can always come up with new and creative things. And yet, all that new and creative things, they will always be simple. So it feels like a contradiction, but it is not. The reconciling instrument is the HDF lattice, where you see the two properties as one thing. One of the most beautiful things you can... Listen. You think it's a coincidence that a black African man invented organized complexity, a physics of blackness that explains everything, in a world that runs on, or that is organized according to anti-blackness and the pursuit of white supremacy. You simply don't want to understand the era that you are in. These are not coincidences. This is a deep message coming from God, telling the world that the world is pursuing the wrong thing. A message saying to the world that you are in the opposite direction of where you are supposed to be going. You are pursuing nonsense, doing evil, creating craziness all over the world. Do you understand? Saying you are looking for knowledge, you are looking, you reclassify knowledge as an inferior intellectual phenomenon. Meanwhile, that same blackness is what is delivering intelligence in the human brain. We've just talked about the neocortex, but you think that's where it ends? There's melanin in your head. Why? Go and look at your mainstream science textbook. It will tell you that it doesn't know what that melanin is doing there. Maybe it is protecting the brain cells from oxidation, but your dopaminergic pathways and your dopaminergic secretions, they are all melanated in your brain. Why? I told you of the relationship between melanin and dopamine, but it's more than that. You see, your earliest memories are formed from the behavior of dopamine. It's literally the thing that begins to tell you what your value system is going to be. And all those things are very highly melanated. They're very black. Can you imagine it? If you have problems in those dopaminergic networks, then it means your value systems will be crazy. You become somebody that is killing, destroying, raping, twisting, and then you will think those things are good because you have a problem with blackness in your head. It's not a social thing, it's a biological problem. It's a mental problem, a problem of functional design, which is why I know that it can be cured. Do you understand? It's just a malfunctioning brain. Why? That brain is not producing enough blackness where it is needed because of an attenuation in that synthesis of blackness driven by the climate. Because in an environment where everything is frozen and food is very scarce and life is hanging by a thread, where you don't have time to be processing all the higher cognitions. No, everything there is very aggressive. It wants to eat. It wants to live. So nature suspended all those faculties and gave the creature, because that's what nature does. That's what God does. Everything is given what it needs. It gave the creature what it needs to survive in that environment. And that means it needs to get rid of all these higher functioning processes in the brain. Now, the creature that has emerged, the human creature that has emerged from that environment is carrying a kind of brain process that is not suited to any other part of this world. And so it begins to treat every other part of this world as if it's still in that environment by cannibalizing everything. And then reimagining the whole thing that this is what goodness and this is what intelligence feels like. I mean, I don't even understand how to even frame this. How can that? It's like destroying your entire car and then claiming that this is what the nature of intelligence is. You are destroying your home, your only home in the universe, and you're claiming that this is what intelligence is. I mean, how do you even make that kind of claim with a straight face? I don't even know. But there you go. Now, because the issue itself is not recognized, then it means that nobody's looking for a solution. Everybody's just lying about what is going on until they destroy the entire world. Now, that will not be allowed. It's a conversation I was having the other day. I said, that will not be allowed. You think you're alone in this universe. You think, you think you're alone. No, what you feel is loneliness. It doesn't mean that you're alone. You feel loneliness because nothing out there wants to talk to you. Why? Because you're fucking dangerous. I mean, look at the human beings on Earth who didn't develop weapons or because they're benign. Intelligence, human intelligence. What this blackness does is that it makes a human being so intelligent, you become so benign. The idea of war, weapons, all this, they disappear from your consciousness. I keep telling people, I say, how do you imagine that the creation of a gun represents a boost in intelligence? You only create a gun because your environment demands that you need an instrument for conflict. People who don't live in that type of conflictual situation, who have learned to live among themselves and love themselves, they do not conceive of more industrial ways of killing people. They don't. There's this anti-black racist narrative that always goes around the place that says, oh, Black Africans were enslaving themselves all through Africa and they sold themselves to. It's all a lie. Because you don't enslave people by shaking hands with them. Enslavement is a feature of a conflict environment. And any environment where you have ongoing conflict with your fellow human being, you must develop weapons. Otherwise, what is the point? Enslavement means that you go and take something that is not yours. Are you going to do it with bow and arrows? If somebody starts doing it with a bow and arrow, at some point in time, somebody will figure out that I need a faster, more deadly bow and arrow. That's where the gun came from. It's a solution that came out because people who lived like that, their environment mandated the emergence of that nonsense. Because they live in an environment that's very impoverished. Everybody's fighting over land, over this, over that. People who don't live in that type of environment, whose ancestry did not come from that environment, they don't have those impulses. When they come across people who have those impulses, it's a slaughter. This is why human beings on Earth are currently feeling lonely. They feel like there's no intelligence out there. That's not what it is. That's all the intelligent human beings out there in the cosmos. They talk to each other, but they can't talk to you. Because if you meet them, you're going to slaughter them. You're going to rob them. You would like to even trace them to their home world so you can go and enslave all of them there. Because you are insane. You are still struggling with something as fundamental as blackness. What about people who embraced the realization 15,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, a million years ago? Do you know how advanced they are by now? Look at what I'm describing to you. Modern science has not even begun to look at these things. Still in the business of cannibalizing things. It hasn't even settled on working with the truth. It's still treating the truth like it's poison. What about people who have embraced the truth? They embrace it for tens of thousands of years. Do you know what their reality looks like by now? That's why they can't talk to you. When they look at people, especially the racists on this earth, when they look at them, they're only filled with compassion because they see a creature that is in such peril. That is a creature that is totally saturated with foolishness. And they can't help you. They can't, because every human creature must come to their own realization. That's the only way for acceptance. Otherwise, they will rebel. So the best thing is to just stay away. That's why when I hear of all these, the US government has this craft, or the US government has this craft, they got some alien tech and everything. It's all a lie. Listen to me. I'm not saying it behind closed. You can quote me. Haniel said that all of these narratives are lies. They don't have anything. There is no disclosure of anything. In fact, the main disclosure is that they don't know how to tell you the truth, that all of it is just bullshit. They don't have anything. They don't recover any. What craft? Do you know what, do you know what a vessel is? Huh? I once teased somebody. I said, if an extraterrestrial vessel crash landed on Earth, it will create such an earthquake because the mass of this thing is, it can float like a leaf, but when you turn off the systems, the thing just becomes as heavy as a I don't know, what description to use. That if one of such things ever crashed anywhere, it's not possible to move them. You have to build something over them to cover them. You can't move it. There's nothing on earth that can move that thing. Sometimes I just get so saturated with the foolishness of it all. I just switch everything off. I don't want to hear anymore because I feel like being surrounded by such nonsense, it has some type of negative effect. Because why would someone want to live in a system that is completely saturated with lies? It's very bad for the soul. So let's move to the thyroid gland. There are 6 fundamental metabolic pathways. It's a 6-fold metabolic governor. The thyroid gland regulates metabolism, growth, and development through its hormones. The 6 major steps in thyroid hormone synthesis. The synthesis of thyroid hormones T3 and T4 is a precise multi-step biochemical process involving 6 distinct sequential transformations. The iodide trapping active transport into follicular cells. That's number 1. Number 2, synthesis of thyroglobulin. Number 3, iodide efflux and oxidation. Number 4, iodination of tyrosine residues on TG. Number 5, the coupling of iodinated tyrosines. And tyrosine is where melanin starts its journey from. Then endocytosis, proteolysis, and release of T3 and T4. This clear 6-step biochemical cascade ensures regulated production of vital metabolic hormones. 6 major effects of thyroid hormones on target tissue. Thyroid hormones exert widespread influence across the body, affecting at least 6 primary functional categories. The increased basal metabolic rate, the growth and development, especially nervous and skeletal system rate, that's cardiovascular effects, heart rate, contractility, nervous system effects, excitability, alertness, metabolic effects, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, reproductive. The thyroid is very important. It's literally plugged into everything, and it has all these connections with tyrosine, which is fantastic because there's a lot going on there. Okay, there's no time for more details. I'm just going to skip through. So you have the parathyroid glands, a 6-fold guardian of calcium homeostasis. These small glands are critically important for maintaining calcium balance, a process known to be linked to 6 major hormones and factors. What are these 6 major steps in parathyroid hormone action on bone? PTH direct action on bone specifically involves a precise cascade of 6 key steps to raise blood calcium. PTH binding on osteoblasts, that's number 1. Number 2, increased rankle expression by osteoblasts. Number 3, osteoprotegerine modulation, osteoclast precursor differentiation, osteoclast activation, calcium and phosphorus release from bone resorption. Alright? Now moving to the circulatory system, there's also sixness. That now becomes like a tautological statement right now. It's all built around 6. Without it, it doesn't work. 6 is blackness. That's why when somebody tells me, oh, there's a white human being, I'm wondering where it is. Where is this whiteness that you're talking about? Because if such a thing is not possible with the laws of physics of this universe, it's impossible for you to have a white human being. Because what you're basically saying is that you are built from a different type of organization. And the question is, what is that organization? Why don't you tell us what it is? Because you're basically saying that in your own organization, all this sixness is nowhere to be found. Because sixness is blackness. And a lot of people, were arguing with me at some time that how can you equate sixness to blackness? I said, well, I didn't equate sixness to blackness. Nature did. Nature did. Across its entire expression, that's what it did. Don't ask me why I equate. I didn't equate it. I simply observed it. So if you have a problem, take it up with the Most High. Beyond the heart, the circulatory system's vast network of blood vessels and the components of blood itself exhibit profound sixness in their design for transport and homeostasis. I tell people, I say, if in your worldview, you believe that this is a black human, this is a white human, and you are calling yourself white because your epidermis no longer produces significant amount of melanin, then it means that you don't know anything. Because you don't even know what you're saying. What part of you is white? Does your body produce white pigmentation? There's no human body that does that. It's not a process in the human body. Alright? So where is the designation coming from? It turns out the designation was just created as an antagonist. A social antagonist, a way to punish people and, to isolate them, to mark them, to say, okay, you are now a target. Well, I just define myself as something different to you. The idea of defining white human beings is so that you can create a social narrative around that definition, even though it's not real. You can keep investing in it as if it's real, thereby creating some type of exclusion for those that are richly melanated. And the reason why this was done is because it's a projection. The ones who are doing this are the ones that felt different in the sense that they felt something missing from them. So they spun it around. That's what projections are. When you can't accept something that is true, you just twist it around and you project it on the other person. You say, oh, this problem is not really me that has the problem. It's your problem. Anybody who does that, they'll probably call you a narcissist or something like that. All right. But it becomes important to clarify what the facts are, because when I clarify these facts, I get abused a lot. But I don't know what it is that they're abusing. That's why I don't feel they're abusing, because I don't know what it is anybody's abusing. If you're abusing what I'm saying, it means that you're abusing something like Newton's theory of gravity. Go ahead and abuse it. What difference does it make? It's either it is true or it is not. It's like abusing the laws of thermodynamics. Well, that's your problem. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. All right? You just create confusion and craziness everywhere. And the effects of those things are very debilitating. There's really nothing to benefit in those things. Just that it takes a while for people to become convinced that there's nothing to benefit in it. Do you understand? You create so much trouble for yourself, so much craziness. And these things, like I said, deceit does not exist outside of the human head. Do you understand? Everything else in existence is trying to be as much of what it is as possible. And then you get to the human being and you are given free will so that you can have the space to tell whatever stories that you want. So you can decide to tell stories that are not true. But you forget that when you are telling stories that are not true, you are going to have to represent the falsehood and the deceit as biochemical structures in your own brain. Not in my brain. Not in anybody's brain. You who are embedding the deceit within yourself, you are going to contain the deceit as a biochemical process. And so you can imagine the type of representation that encodes the rejection of blackness. It's like using your car to prove that cars do not exist. There's a technical term for that. It's called self-negation. So every anti-black racist in the world is pursuing self-negation, self-deletion. I'm not the one saying so. I'm telling you what the physics says. This is what the rules of the universe, this is what they tell you. It's up to you if you want to accept it, if you want to reject it. What do I care? All right? I'm like someone who's saying 1 + 1 is 2. And you start abusing me. What are you abusing me for? Huh? It doesn't make any difference. You can abuse me till tomorrow, but what difference does it make? Does it stop 1 + 1 from being 2? It doesn't. So, blood vessels, a 6-fold design for distribution and exchange. Blood vessels are specialized conduits for blood flow and exchange. There are 6 major types of blood vessels. The vascular tree is functionally specialized into 6 primary types of blood vessels. There's the elastic arteries, the muscular arteries, the arterioles, the capillaries, the venules, and the veins. This 6-fold structural and functional design ensures efficient transport and harmonious adaptation to varying physiological demands. 6 key substances regulating vasomotor tone. Blood vessel diameter is tightly regulated by at least 6 major physiological factors. Norepinephrine or epinephrine, nitric oxide, endothelins, angiotensin, prostaglandins, and adenosine. It's interesting the inclusion of adenosine, because adenosine is also used as a nucleotide in its variant form of adenine for long-term memory. Okay. Adenosine is also used as the carrier of the 3 phosphates that are 3 tetrahedrons in ATP, and each tetrahedron has those 6 sides. It's even deeper than that. Each tetrahedron has 3 oxygen atoms that face, ready for interaction. Each oxygen atom has 6 valence electrons. So on each tetrahedron level, you have 3 6s from the oxygen. And the tetrahedrons themselves represent 3 6s. You think it's a coincidence? A tetrahedron is the simplest 3-dimensional polygon, meaning it's the cheapest to make. And in chemistry, energy is held as bonds. So those sides of the tetrahedron, those edges, they represent chemical bonds, which is why ATP seems to be like something that supplies energy, but it really is not about energy. It's about information and its conservation. The conservation of organized complexity. That's really what it is. Blood components, a 6-fold design for transport and defense. Blood is a complex fluid with diverse components essential for transport and immunity. There are 6 major classes of plasma proteins. Blood plasma contains 6 major functional or structural classes of proteins. There are the albumins. These are the most abundant, maintain osmotic pressure, transport various substances. Then there are the globulins, the alpha, beta, and gamma. They have diverse roles, including transport and immunity, antibodies. Then there's the fibrinogen, crucial for blood clotting. Then there are the complement proteins. They are part of the innate immune system. Then there's the lipoproteins, transport lipids like LDL, HDL. Then you have enzyme inhibitors, various enzymes and their inhibitors involved in coagulation, fibrinolysis, etc. These diverse components collectively underscore blood's role as a central manufacturing and regulatory fluid, contributing to its functional harmony. There are 6 key steps in platelet activation. Adhesion, where platelets stick to exposed collagen in the injured blood vessel or in the injured vessel wall. Shape change, platelets rapidly change from discoid to spherical with pseudopods. There's the secretion stage where granule release, platelets release procoagulant and vasoconstrictive substances from their granules, like ADP, serotonin, thromboxane. ADP, that's adenosine diphosphate. So that's when you take one of the 6s away from ATP. Because ATP is used as a general signaling molecule. In fact, all biochemical reactions in the body can be classified into 3 stages, just because of the structure of ATP. And as a result of that, ATP often serves like a signaling molecule. Because you can imagine 3 broad categories for every type of transaction. There's the transaction of AMP, that is adenosine monophosphate, when it has only one phosphate. Then there are reactions that are tied to adenosine diphosphate when there are only two phosphates attached to the nitrogenous base, or the nitrogenous structure. I won't call it a base in that sense. Then you have the ATP where there are the three phosphates complete. So every reaction is basically coded in that sense. So you have uncountable number of reactions, but they're all divided into these three major segments. It's a very interesting kind of whatever. Carbohydrate metabolism, a six-fold dance of energy and regulation. Now, I like this part because I focused most of my podcast on the biochemistry of living memory. I talked about metabolism a lot. Metabolism is a very interesting process. It's basically describing how our bodies act as factories. Walking mobile factory. So 6 major steps in glycolysis. Glycolysis is what I describe as a memory datum. That's what all memory is based on, glycolysis. The structure of the process of glycolysis is used as a datum in my theory. So the first stage is glucose phosphorylation, then fructose 6-phosphate formation, then fructose 1,6 biphosphate phosphorylation, then the cleavage to triose phosphates. Then the 5th step is ATP generation, which is substrate level phosphorylation, and the 6th is pyruvate formation. This 6-step biochemical cascade efficiently processes glucose into usable energy, ensuring efficient energy transfer. Very important process. 6-carbon sugar metabolism specialization. Specific sets of transport proteins and enzymatic pathways are specialized for the absorption and metabolism of 6-carbon sugars like glucose and fructose, forming a dedicated 6-carbon handling unit. This specialization ensures rapid and efficient uptake of vital energy resources. 6 major hormones factors regulating blood glucose. Precise blood glucose homeostasis is maintained by 6 major physiological regulators. Number 1, insulin. Number 2, glucagon. Number 3, epinephrine or adrenaline. Number 4, cortisol. Number 5, growth hormone. Number 6, thyroid hormone. This sextet of hormones provides a robust and dynamic system for glucose regulation, preventing metabolic imbalances that lead to disease. Let's see. And they're all connected, right? All of these, they're like, you have sensors in some sense, biological sensors that monitor for these hormones. And based on what the monitoring station is feeding back, your entire biochemistry can be altered because your body is constantly searching for homeostasis, meaning a balance. So it listens for that balance. And when it feels like something has gone off balance, it adjusts another thing. So that's something that's going on in the hypothalamus, a very important organ in your brain. But the decision making really is taking place along every part of your body, So fat metabolism, a 6-fold system for energy storage and mobilization. Fats are critical for energy storage, membrane structure, and signaling. So 6 major classes of lipids in human metabolism are triglycerides, phospholipids, steroids, which involves cholesterol and other steroid hormones. You have fatty acids, then sphingolipids and lipoproteins. You have the VLDL, LDL, HDL, and all the things that have been said to people about cholesterol in the last couple of decades of how cholesterol is this and cholesterol is that. Your brain is 60% cholesterol. Keep listening to them and you will not like where they take you. 6 key steps in beta oxidation of fatty acids. The primary pathway for breaking down fatty acids for energy, beta oxidation, involves 6 key steps or enzymatic transformations per cycle. Activation, that is acyl-CoA synthase. I've forgotten what the full meaning of CoA is or whatever. Second one is transport into mitochondria, carnitine shuttle. Third is dehydrogenation. Fourth is hydration. Fifth is dehydrogenation. Sixth is theolytic cleavage. This precise biochemical cascade efficiently processes fatty acids into energy, showcasing functional harmony. Then now the metabolism of proteins, a 6-fold cycle of amino acid management. Amino acids, beyond forming new proteins, have 6 major functional pathways or outcomes in human metabolism. Number 1 is protein synthesis. Number 2 is energy production, which is a form of oxidation. Number 3 is gluconeogenesis. Number 4 is ketogenesis. People talk a lot about keto when they are trying new diets of, mainly proteins. Number 5 is synthesis of non-protein nitrogenous compounds. Number 6 is the urea cycle for nitrogen excretion. This demonstrates the harmonious management of diverse amino acid inputs into highly prescribed cellular outputs. The 6-step urea cycle. The urea cycle, vital for detoxifying ammonia, consists of 6 distinct enzymatic steps that convert toxic ammonia into less toxic urea for excretion. This precise multi-step process is crucial for maintaining biochemical balance. So you have sixness in other digestive system. Look, this paper is just one of 3 that I wrote on this sixness. So I've explored a vast number of biochemical processes, tracking down these things. The number of biochemical processes being tracked down for sixness is not the evidence itself. The evidence is in the proof of Riemann's hypothesis. The evidence itself is what underlies the entire framework of organized complexity. Because we're not just noticing things, we have to be able to explain why. You see, because you can submit something like, you can say, oh, this is the evidence, this sixness and all this. Yeah, but there are other processes that may not also contain sixness. They're not. But, people could make that argument. So you need a more technical reason of why nature is selecting these particular strategies. And it turns out that the main reason is for the dynamic stability of chaos. Without it, you can't implement complex systems as biological living systems. You can't. And where did nature get the intelligence to be able to, find the dynamic stability of chaos? It's because that intelligence is encoded in the physical laws of nature. If you want to know why the speed of light is what it is, you want to know why the mass of the electron is what it is, all of these things are set by the necessity for dynamic stability. They couldn't have taken any other values, which is why I told you in the beginning that there's no such thing as all these multiverse, metaverse, all these infinity, whatever. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. The universe is a prescription. It's a one prescription. So things cannot really be anything else. They have to be what they currently are. That is the prescription. Because if you don't follow that route, then me, will become impossible to realize. You see? And the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God is that across an infinite amount of time, he can realize an objective so precisely. Nothing else can do that. And so you see the relationship between God and blackness. It's a very close relationship because he's using that property which he created by creating the logic of arithmetic. God invented the logic of arithmetic as I don't want to go into that conversation, but it's more like a recognition of self. All right. So for something to be, it has to have organization and structure. So that logic of arithmetic becomes the structure itself, so that the universe did not come from this lattice. The universe is that lattice. We are that lattice. That is why the lattice is recreated in our heads. And it's a self-organizing process, meaning from the beginning of the universe. I have a paper where I published the singularity and did some research about the singularity of the universe. And, the research told us that the singularity of the universe is not the way that people think it is currently. They think of it as a point. It wasn't a point per se. As at the time when it was a point, nothing was happening. It only activated when it formed a crystal that is made up of 6 points in some sense. I remember when I first watched the movie Avengers and all those things, and they started talking about the Infinity Stones. That before the universe, there were 6 singularities. Where do you think all of that came from? You think these people just sat down in their heads, wherever they are, and invented this idea? You haven't been paying attention to your movies then. I drew the attention to that. I said, look, human realities run on stories. Your reality now is like a story. All right? Stories are like operating systems for human beings, for self-aware creatures. We invest in stories. In fact, what we experience as self-awareness is a greater latitude in the telling of stories. So, when you listen to the mainstream stories that are being broadcast to you, there's a reason why they are broadcasting those types of stories, but the knowledge came from somewhere. The way they arrange themselves like a hexagon in some sense, but what it really is a cube. But it's a cubic tessellation. Do you understand? Now, that cubic tessellation is the singularity from which the universe unfolded in a phylotactic pattern. Why phylotaxis? Because the prime numbers are arranged phylotactically. You don't believe me? Go and check. This phylotactic pattern is the pattern you see when you look at the head of a sunflower. You see the way those things in the middle of a sunflower, the way they are arranged, they're spiraling out. It's phylotaxis. Phylotaxis is mainly seen in plants, the way that plants arrange their leaves so that one leaf does not cover the other, so that each leaf can get the maximum amount of sunlight that allows it to grow. So you see it in leaves, but for me, I recognize that before leaves can bring this out, the understanding exists in nature. Nature is trying to optimize something. And in this case, it's trying to maximize the amount of sunlight that each leaf can get. So if it stacks the leaf directly one above the other, the plant won't survive. So it spreads them out, trying to look for those arrangements that don't overlap in that sense. And the constraint leads to the phenomena of phyllotaxis. It is the golden angle. The golden angle. And it is what is responsible for what you call electromagnetism. The golden angle is 137 degrees point something. Well, the electromagnetism is a calibration of what you call the fine structure constant, which is 1/137 point something. And I wrote a paper on that.